place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Monday, December 2nd, 2024, and this is episode 979 of Living Free in Tennessee. And we've had a couple of audio issues, so if somebody could tell me if you can hear me in the comments, that would be fantastic, because it looks like I'm producing sound, but I just had another little funny glitch happen with StreamYard. So you never know. Anyway, today is the annual episode of figuring out if we want to do handmade gifts. No, that's not exactly it. It's a brainstorm of gifts we can make from hand. Hello, Tim. Welcome to the show. I sent you an email, by the way. Anyway, handmade gifts that we can make from the Homestead. And I've got some ideas to kick out, and I'm hoping that y'all in the live stream will also pitch in some ideas too. We will also do all of our normal Monday segments like the Tales from the Prepper Pantry, Frugality Tip, the shopping update, all of that and more today. Before we jump into that, though, I want to talk about two things. One, my featured event is the LFTN Christmas gathering on December 21st. If you think you're going to come out to that, it's from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. We're going alcohol free this year because there are a few members of the LFTN community who gave up alcohol this year, and I wanted to give them a place where they can come celebrate Christmas with us without feeling the pressure of alcohol. So I'm just asking no alcohol this year, and that's you can sign up for that over at livingfreeintennessee.com. And actually, I guess I could show y'all my screen so you can see how you find the thing, because that's always part of the fun. If you go to livingfreeintennessee.com on your web browser, on the side, you'll see the digital holiday treats, webinars, and events. If you are on a cell phone, those will stack below the first couple of blog posts. And then the Living Free in Tennessee Christmas reception is right there on the right. Click on that. There's a little form you fill out. This is not a paid event. We're just asking you to please let us know you're coming so we know how many people are coming, and then bring a side dish of some sort to share, or an appetizer or cookies or something. We just put some stuff out on the table, and the more people that come, the more food there is. And then everybody gets some good snacks. We have good cheer. I will have my Christmas tree up, but not decked. You can help me deck the tree at the event. And if you're feeling extra creative, a lot of people will make a Christmas ornament to put on the tree, like handmade from something they find around their home or their homestead. Really, some creative ideas have come out. I've had shotgun shells turned into ornaments over the years, pine cones. Somebody actually laminated a silver-backed dollar once. I think it was silver-backed. Anyway, a whole bunch of interesting stuff. Those ornaments come out, and it's all just stuff from the Living Free in Tennessee community. I love having those on the tree. So if you're feeling creative, bring that. And if not, don't let that keep you from coming. So check that out at livingfreeintennessee.com. Also, if you are a member, the member webinar for December was supposed to be a solar presentation from Sean Mills from Hack My Homestead. And I spoke with Sean, and he's had a couple of big life changes happen. And so we're going to end up delaying that into 2025. There will be a cast iron webinar in December with Nighthawk showing us how to cook with and care for cast iron. If you were saving your last membership webinar for the solar one, that's fine. Save it. You'll have 4 in 2025. You can still use it. I won't get mad at you. I just spoke with Sean today, and he said, realistically, I can't do a good job on that with everything going on in my background. And so maybe next year we'll find a different date. So that will end up being a Saturday webinar, because he started a new job that he just couldn't say no to. So that's all happening. And I wanted to make sure you knew what was up with that. I will also send an email to all the members so you know what's up. Okay. Sponsor 1 today is EMP Shield. EMP Shield provides a device that basically protects your entire house or car or solar system or whatever from surges in electricity. You can get 15% off right now. They've got a coupon, or you can get $50 off per unit. If you want to check that out, just use my LFTN coupon code, which is shockingly LFTN. And then you just go to their website, navigate, and you'll just see the different types of devices you can get. $50 off $399 brings it down to $350, $349 actually. So lots of different options you can get there. Check it out, empshield.com. They are the best I've found on the market for this kind of protection. And I have 2 installed here. I have one on my roasting shack, and then I have one on the main house, and we'll be adding one to the solar system next. That's my next. I've been buying them one at a time as budgets allow, obviously, because it's an investment, but they're super easy to install on the breaker board. You can get an electrician to help you with that, or I noticed how easy it was to install them. So I'm not going to say more about that in detail, because depending on your market, you have to decide how you're going to do that. Like your local area is what determines if you need the electrician for that kind of change or not. In mine, I don't, because it's just an addition to the breaker board, but some places are very persnickety about that sort of thing. The other sponsor of today's show is John Pugliano and the Wealthsteading Podcast. The Wealthsteading Podcast is just John talking about how he's making investment decisions, and he takes a holistic approach to investment. And when there's a problem in the world, he doesn't ask himself, how do I hide my money? He says, how do I make money off of this problem? He's been an entrepreneur and an author for a long time, and he's one of us. He's a ham radio guy, by the way, which is really fun. If you ever see him at an event and have ham radio questions, you can check that out. But check out his podcast at investablewealth.com. And then if you go there and click on podcast, video, and book, that's the link in the upper right, you'll get straight to his podcast. Of course, if you have a podcatcher on any device, you just check out Wealthsteading Podcast, put it in the search bar, and that will download. He's even on Fountain FM. He's gotten on board with that, so you can go zap him some sats as well. With that, it's time for the main topic, or to start the actual show and stop thanking the sponsors, even though we love our sponsors. Tales from the Prepper Pantry. This is where we talk about storing what you use and using what you store. My life has changed so much in the last 5 years that what I store is a lot lower amounts than I used to. And my goal is to have about a year of things stored up that can store for a year. What I mean by that is, like, I'm not going to store fresh milk a year's worth. That doesn't make sense. And then I rotate things through my pantry, so I always have that pantry savings account. Of course, living on a homestead, there are times of year when you have more of something. There are times of year when you have less of something, just based on the season. A good example of this is in the summer, I get a lot of fresh vegetables. So part of my pantry stability plan is to grow vegetables and harvest them and eat them, right? Well, when I have abundance, I can them. And so I have certain targets every year for the things that can well or store well. You can dry things, you can freeze things. So I have 60 jars of green beans put up for the winter. And then hopefully by the time those run out, I end up with some vegetables coming out of the garden. Usually it's not green beans. Usually it's the spring greens are coming on. I'm getting Swiss chard. I'm getting lettuces. I'm getting those sorts of things. And then the green beans start again later in the season. But that's how we've crafted the life here. And we've been hitting the green beans pretty hard because they're a very easy side dish once they've been canned. Now, some people don't like canned green beans because they're squishy. I get it. If you want them more al dente, what you want to do is parboil them, and then you put them in the freezer. If you don't parboil them before you put them in the freezer, I'm told that you end up with sticks. They never get soft. Now, I've done it before without doing that, and in a long, slow stew, they ended up soft. So I don't know to what extent that actually happens, but I do know that was, an example of me cooking the green beans on the wood stove for a really long time. So it might be like they eventually get soft, but it takes forever. So I do find that when vegetables ask for blanching, that's a good idea to blanch before you freeze or before you dry. So definitely pay attention to that. This week we are doing a big freezer reorganization, and that's because the Rams are going to the processor. I still have that date in January, but it could happen at any point. And if they call me and say they have a cancellation, we're going to jump right into that. So there's that. And then we have a cow coming probably next week. And then after that, I have a second cow coming later in the month. What I do with my meat is we buy directly for the household and put that in some freezers. And then I buy through the company for events and put that in a different freezer. Well, right now, because there's no company meat left, I've just got it everywhere. So we're doing the reorganization where I go buy animal, and then I have the one freezer dedicated to corporate meat. And I can buy meat from my company later if I need to, but usually we have enough just coming in directly. So that whole thing is happening. I've been really focused on cooking from sort of the pieces that you don't really cook as much. Like steaks happen easily, right? But for me, the ribs of the cow are something I put off cooking. And so now I'm just cooking all the ribs at least once. I do a crock pot of ribs once a month or once a week, pretty much, if I'm home. And that just helps us work through all of those, because what I found with the ribs is I like them low and slow in the crock pot with some seasonings. And then you never know how much meat you're getting off the ribs. So I cook a whole bunch of them, and then we just eat whatever we can, and whatever's left over goes into holler stew that week. And that works out pretty great. I used to just put a couple of ribs in, like 2 packages of ribs, and which is 2 little squares basically in the way they're packaged from my processor. And what would happen is I'd get one where it was just pretty much all fat, and then there'd be one with meat, and then we'd be like, "Yeah, we're making breakfast sausage tonight." So I cook it all. I cook it in bulk, and then we go from there. But beef ribs are delicious, by the way. They are really delicious. I just do salt, pepper, garlic in the crock pot. I don't even like, sometimes I'll add a little bit of white wine for some liquid, but I've put them in there and not put anything in. And they have enough of their own juices that it works just fine in my crock pot anyway. Start it at the beginning of the day, have it at the end of the day. It's one of those wonderful meals that doesn't take a lot of time to cook. We are getting ready for the SOE party, which means the holler roast cocktail, signature cocktail that was being worked on at Jack Spirko's, is going to come out. And I'll have some supplies on hand to make some of those. We've decided it's called the Holler Buzz. No, I'm sorry, not the Holler Buzz. It's so funny. We had this long conversation about the name. So now I don't know the name. It's the Holler Riff. And then there is a tagline, Espresso con Brio. So you can go look up that one. But we've got those coming out. We are getting bean barrels ready, all sorts of stuff to head out to John Willis's next week, at the end of the week, because his party's on Saturday. Are you going to his party? Let me know. I'm curious. Like, if you do, definitely stop by the Holler Roast booth. We're going to have sipping chocolate. We're going to have espresso. We're going to have coffee. We're going to have, all of the things for sale for Holler Roast. And we'll just having a all around good time next Saturday at SOE. And a lot of that means that we also need to pre-plan from the pantry what food we're going to bring, so we don't need to go out to eat while we're there. So, I'll probably buy some food from there. They have some food trucks on hand on Saturday. But in general, my plan is just make it so I can cook at the B&B we're staying at, and then it's super easy to pack up and then get out of there. I may even pre-cook. Like, I'll either bring steaks or we'll pre-cook something that we can just reheat in the oven there, and it's done. Because done and simple is what I'm looking for in that regard, especially when I'm traveling. Still working on the redo of the prepper pantry. So I had to sit down with Tactical this morning, and we need to close in the transition from the attic. Like, my roof comes down and then changes angles, and where that transition is needs to be closed in. He's got the lumber to do that. I don't know when he's going to start doing that, but at the same time, it's really cold this week. So we don't have all of the insulation up under the roof. So I'll be running a little space heater in there probably tonight, because it's going to get really cold tonight, like 21 degrees. And if that's not done soon, we're going to have a challenge going into the winter. So I think that's kicking up on the priority list. And also, I'd like to be able to put my things back away in there, because they're just out in the open air under my carport. So that's not super fun for me, because I feel very disorganized with my pantry that way, frankly speaking. And, anything can get in there. A mouse could just crawl in from outside if they want to. That being said, I'm not storing food out there. I've got the food all tucked in places around my house. That will go away once the prepper pantry's done and we can get everything back in sort of the methodical shelving system that was in before. And it'll be nice to have it done, because the utilities will be more efficiently placed because it's a combination pantry utility room. The utilities will be more efficiently placed, and the electrical wiring will be set up the way it's supposed to be set up. And then I can customize the shelves the way I've always wanted the shelves to be. So it'll be nice. But I'm starting to be impatient about that project getting done, of course. other than that, we had Thanksgiving last week, and even though I didn't host, I did end up with some leftovers. Nighthawk made the dressing for the event, and he got his grandma's recipe, made it from scratch. I thought he was going to do stovetop, but he was like, he called his mom, talked about doing it. She sent him the recipe. He did one batch. His mom usually does 2 batches for Thanksgiving. Okay, so we have so much dressing everywhere. He ended up with one big casserole dish and like 3 or 4 other casserole dishes. I don't know. It was everywhere. There was dressing everywhere. And he sent that, he kept some at, he left some behind at the place that hosted at Matt and Ashley's. And then he took the rest of it home, and we had a holler neighbor dinner last night. And I was like, hey, knowing that he was swimming and dressing, do you have leftover dressing? And he was like, yes. And I was like, bring it down in the morning. I'll heat it for dinner tonight. So we had a fun holler neighbor dinner that was, I did a Romer top roast with carrots. I heated the dressing. I had a holler stew that was just all of the leftover meats in my fridge from, because I did a ham at Thanksgiving, but then we also had a few pieces of pork loin. And then I had some beef rib meat from cooking beef ribs, and I had some chicken in there. So we put all of that into a stew with green beans and onion. And I think I threw some carrots in there too. Carrots are on the menu this time of year because it's a root vegetable that stores well. And so that was available. And then I had taken the leftover mashed potatoes and mixed eggs and cheese with them. So we had potato pancakes. I actually put a little bit of flour in yesterday. It was like the 3rd day of making potato pancakes. They hold together better with flour, but I try not to have wheat in my diet at all. So I did that yesterday just to make it easier. And then a big old green salad. So what was really delicious was taking the dressing and then putting the holler stew over it. That's what I did. But, Thanksgiving leftovers are always a fun, like it's fun to make that turkey bowl a few times, but then you're like, okay, what else can I do with this? So the holler stew is a great way to use it up with the dressing. Potato pancakes with cheese were also a winner in my house. What were you guys doing for yours? I'm wondering. Put it in the comments if you did anything fun with your leftovers besides just packaged them up, threw them in the freezer, and figured you'd have turkey dinner 2.0. I'm actually picking up my Thanksgiving turkey next week at SOE. I bought one from Dawn Gorham. Hopefully she's giving me one of her smaller ones. I probably should text her about that. I don't need a big 25-pound turkey. But I may cook that over Christmas, or I may wait until sometime in January. I am planning to do tomahawk steaks for Christmas dinner as long as I can find tomahawk steaks. So I am still looking for tomahawk steaks, and haven't heard. So it's just like, if the cow schedule happens to where I will get the cow before Christmas, then I'm going to ask him to do tomahawks, or to at least just give me the whole rib, because the tomahawk steak is like attached to the rib, and it's thick, and it's almost like cooking a roast, and it feeds 2 people unless you're tactical, who will probably eat one all by himself with no problem. Very tender, perfectly marbled. Like, they're just a really great medium rare sort of thing to cook. You just sort of see. I did a reverse sear though. I've only cooked them once. Did a reverse sear, which means I seared it, finished it in the oven. Didn't have a thermometer for the meat, so I had to like squish it to decide if it was done or not. It ended up perfect. And then I melted butter and poured butter over it when I was done. And that's all it took. And that's what I'm hoping to be able to do for Christmas dinner. So we'll see. Anyway, next up, we have the weekly shopping report from Joe. And here's what Joe says. Took our usual trip on Friday. And guys, this was Black Friday. This is the Friday when everybody else goes out shopping for their Christmas presents. And there's a big fight in the aisles, and we have people being shot. And yeah, okay. So I don't know about you, but Black Friday did not seem like as big a deal this year to me. There wasn't as much buzz about people trying to get, like going out and shopping that day. So I wonder if less buying happened on Black Friday. Now, from the Hollow standpoint, we had a pretty good week last week of people getting their gifts ready. So I'll have to, while I'm talking to you guys, I'll see if statistically it was a bigger week or a smaller week for me, and we'll pull that up. Anyway, so they decided to risk possible Black Friday traffic, but it wasn't too bad. So also Joe's experience was it wasn't too bad. As we approached Dollar Tree, we could see that the China Mart lot was packed, but it did not extend into the Dollar Tree parking lot area. So that's good. That just tells me less panicked people trying to get the absolute cheapest thing, or maybe people have figured out that the Black Friday sales aren't actually usually cheaper than what you could have been getting all darn week and into this week. We're on to Cyber Monday now. And I've noticed, so I've been like keeping my eye on this one keyboard. It's an electric piano I'm kind of interested in. It's a Donner, and they've had a 25% off sale for like 3 weeks, and they still have a 25% off sale. Nothing changed on Black Friday. So I think part of it's just that the retailers aren't doing anything all that much, unless Walmart had some special. We only have 15 TVs at whatever. Yeah, and I know, like, I think Amy, there was a grocery store a ways from her house that was doing 25% off everything for Friday, and she went there and went shopping because 25% off groceries is actually kind of a big deal. Anyway, next we split. Sonia went to Hobby Lobby and I went to Lowe's. Both were very busy, but she didn't have to wait long. Also, we did not go into Home Depot, but the online 2x4x8 is still at $3.85. Aldi was next. Cat food had returned, so we bought a couple of boxes, and eggs are no longer on a 2 dozen limit. And I bet that was happening for Thanksgiving because everybody's, buying heavy whipping cream and eggs during Thanksgiving, and then it goes back to normal consumption. There was very little of the type of chocolate I normally get, and I'm going to guess he gets the same kind of chocolate I do because the kind of chocolate I want to put in the sipping chocolate has been out for weeks at Aldi, and that's fine because I bought a bunch months ago knowing that this party was happening. So I just was like, well, what if I need more? So if I see it at Aldi, I'll totally buy them out. The shelf area was very vacant. Here's the other thing. They've got all their Christmas treats out, so their standard chocolates are low, but their Christmas treats are like exploding at the one I go to. There's just a ton of sweets in the store right now. I bought some for my nieces for Christmas. Anyway, staple prices were as follows. Bread, $1.39. Eggs, $3.96. That's up. That's almost $4 a dozen eggs, guys, at the store. And people complain when homesteaders charge $5 a dozen for chicken eggs. Like, you can get 9,000 times better of eggs from your homestead person that free ranges, even if they're feeding conventional feed, than those eggs at Aldi that are $4. And you just spend $1 more. And then you're more satiated when you eat them. And then you don't need as many because you're not as hungry. Just saying. Heavy cream, $3.03. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Whole milk, $3.03. Heavy cream, $5.39, which makes me cry every time I see it. Orange juice, $3.69. That's up. Butter, $3.99. Bacon, $3.99. Potatoes, $3.69. Potatoes are up. That's actually kind of funny because potato harvest just happened like a month ago. Whole milk, $3.03. Heavy cream, $5.30. I'm sorry. Sugar, $2.69. My eyes hit the wrong line. Maybe I need new glasses. Flour, $1.79, and 80% lean ground beef is $3.99, which is down. They had no cantaloupes. It's also not cantaloupe season, so those are coming out of the southern hemisphere, I assume, or Mexico, if it's still warm enough down there. A gallon of untainted regular is $3.59.9 still. So we'll see how that goes. Next up, we do have a frugality tip this week. Frugality tips are fun. It's just ways for us to share with each other ideas we have for keeping the costs down. I hang my clothes to dry, and that means I don't spend as much propane on drying clothes or electricity if I'm in a place with an electric dryer. It also makes my clothes last longer. That's a frugality tip, right? Now, not everybody feels like they have time or space for it. I invested $45, it's probably more now, in a stainless steel rack that opens up like a European wrap. So it folds up or it folds out. I can put it right by my wood stove. So then I'm function stacking because I'm heating the house and drying my clothes and putting a little humidity into the air because when you heat with wood, the air gets dry. So that's my frugality tip. I've already shared that one before though. This one comes from Margot, and she said, when you have a gathering and you put things out for drinks like sliced lemons, limes, and oranges, there are usually leftovers. What I do is put them in the freezer, and when I'm going to make tea, I'll take out a slice or two in the morning for a hot cup of tea in the afternoon or evening. Alternatively, I'll freeze them in ice cube trays and use them in iced tea in warmer weather. So save the citrus and enjoy it later. So that's just a way to use all of what you put out. That's a good idea. Next up, we have Operation Independence. This is where I talk about building local ongoing revenue into my life and paying off DEBT debt. I own my house, guys. That's kind of exciting every time I think about it. Like, I was kind of excited when that happened, but I was also still in shock from my stepdad dying. So I was just like, okay, this is great. I paid it off. Now it's time for SRF. That's kind of how that went down. But I'm starting to really see the benefit of it. Like I had to come up with some cash and it really taxed my savings and everything to pay it off because I had to come up with like $5,000 with no warning. But I did and paid it off. And the reason that was that the house, like the balance of what was owed on the house was lower than my monthly mortgage payment, but I had a whole bunch of stuff owed in escrow from like, homeowners insurance, homeowners insurance and taxes and stuff like that. So it ended up being a really interesting thing that happened. I actually talked to Matthew Sursley at Jack's. He's like, you'd be surprised how many people that happens to. So if you have a house and it's going to naturally pay itself off, make sure you have more in savings just in case there's a bunch of extra like weird escrow fees. Like the timing of mine just hit when the escrow balance was at the highest it ever had been in the history of the loan. And then I needed to pay that off, which I did. So, so it took me a couple months of like no mortgage payment to feel like I caught up with my emergency fund being, because I hit the emergency fund for that, like the emergency fund being back up to date. And then I had enough from a side hustle. And now that account is looking better again. So things are looking up on that. But I sort of went into the spending freeze, like better be careful. And I'm still in that mode right now going into Christmas, just because it's been a year. We'll just say I did a lot of travel this year. Travel costs money. But that's how you stay out of debt, like as best as you can. And that's the first thing. That's the first foundation of becoming financially independent is, well, if you don't have debt, then you have something to build from. Now, I know there are people who leverage debt to make themselves wealthier. And I'm just not that person. I'm friends with people who do that well, and more power to them. That's not me. So my approach is no debt, keep the debt out of my life, and then live within my means, save as much as I can. And then the other side of becoming financially independent is earn more money, right? So you can't do one without the other, but having the right habits going in is helpful. And then starting to look at the long-term cost of something like all the time and go for the long-term as much as you possibly can rather than the short-term fix. Also really important. It's part of why I invested so much in joists for my house last year, because I needed a long-term fix, not just a jury-rigged fix. You know what I mean? So at this point, we're setting a schedule for classes to be hosted at the Holler Homestead in 2025. I think the first one will be a cheese making class here live and in person, because I realized that doing sort of smaller classes where we can just do them in my living room is nice. And a lot of people want to learn how to make cheese. So we're going to put that together and then do a cheese pairing, like a tasting at the end of the class with cheese, and you can bring your own wine and all of that. That's going to come out, but we're going to do a series of classes going into 2025 and do what I've always wanted to do, which is make this more of a training center. I expect to start having tours here next year too. I haven't felt like it's ready for tours because all it's been is like piles of my crap ripped out of different places while we're fixing it. And it's like, well, that's not usually that way, but that's where all my stuff is right now. Oh, here's another place where all the stuff is because we're fixing that. So it's like the tour of things we're fixing, but we have some really cool stuff, especially in the erosion abatement department, that are pretty fun to look at, and like why decisions have been made about the landscape. We've done some shaping of the land, as well as slowing of the water to slow the erosion, so we keep more of the soil and develop a better environment on the homestead. So those sorts of things will be in the future in 2025. And that's where my head is as far as Operation Independence. I've already sold out of the lamb meat we had for the year and really cruising into what does next year look like. That's why we're also talking about the word of the year, right? So I think in my last episode, I was thinking about create, and then Jenny texted me. She's like, how about craft? And I was like, well, there's also this thing about roadblocks in my life. There are all these roadblocks around, and they're usually roadblocks of my own making. And I want something about not having roadblocks anymore. So unleash came to mind, but then I had another idea that was a totally different word. It's not grow. It was, may have been develop, but it wasn't develop. It was, so see, as you can see, I still haven't decided on my word. And I'm just kind of thinking about the different build. I was thinking about build for next year. So I don't know which one it'll be. Hopefully before the last episode of the year, I can share with y'all what my word of the year is. Hopefully you're honing in on your word of the year. I'm sharing with you that journey just so you know how I go through all of the processes. Anyway, the main topic of today's show, and the real reason you're here, and I probably should put in the show notes, skip 2 minute 30 if you want to just go straight to the gift ideas, is handmade homestead gifts are a great thing to give at Christmas time, especially if people are hard to buy for, and if they're the right kind of people, and you should only hang out with the right kind of people, they will appreciate a handmade gift. Like one time I gave a homemade cheddar cheese to Amanda Willis because I'm like, what do you buy Amanda Willis? Like she can buy what she wants. But maybe if you see something cool and you think of her, sure. But also cheddar cheese, like most people like cheese. And I think she appreciated that gift. And that was just because that was the year I made a bunch of cheddar, and I wasn't sure what to get people as gifts. So then I was like, well, I can cut a wedge of this cheddar off and seal it up, and there you go. I'm also a strong believer in there shouldn't be gift guilt. So, I bring this topic up as a brainstorm because I'm sure y'all have ideas too for what makes really good gifts. And yeah. So today I sat down and was like, what? So usually I've had this thought 2 months ago, and if I was going to order anything to make the handmade gifts, I would have done it. But what do I have around, and what skills do we have this year for the kind of gift ideas we've had? And then, of course, it's always easier for me to come up with girly gift ideas than masculine ones for whatever reason, probably because I'm a girl. But the first one that came to mind was more related to garden tools. A lot of garden tools come with a handle that's not sealed or anything. And so I thought, well, what if you sanded it in a way to make it smooth? Because some of them aren't even sanded all that well. Wooden handles. Shaped it so it fits in a hand. And then sealed it, stained it and sealed it. So you can do this in two ways. One, buy the implement and then make the handle better so it lasts longer. Or two, if it's for somebody who needs this, make your own to go with their whatever that needs a new handle. Something we've learned from Carrie Brown at the Living Free in Tennessee workshop is, how to care for tools, how to extend their life by replacing handles, which is something that's harder to do with how things are built these days than they used to be. But if you choose your tools carefully, you can get ones that have a very, like a screw in area for the handle, or what we used to do for axes, there's a hole in the middle of the axe, you put the wood in, and then you drive nails in on the other side to widen out the wood. You soak it in water before you do that, so it's not just crumbling to pieces. And that's how you get it to stay in there. That's why you'll see on an axe head, like there's metal stripes. That's from driving it in to expand it out, right? So the first thing that came to me was like a polished and sealed wooden handle for whatever tool. Or buy the tools, buy a special tool you think is really good, and then finish the handle. And actually a listener gave me one of those once where he had done that. It was one of his favorite garden tools, and he finished the handle too, so it would last longer. I still have that tool to this day, of course. So that's a great handmade gift idea. It's a little bit of purchase, but a little bit of craft as well. And it's an art that a lot of people are forgetting how to do. Homesteaders, keepers of the lost arts. The next one I had has to do with homesteading very specifically. And how many of you save seeds from your garden? Like, put Y in the comments if you do. Just curious. I know I do. I have one particular variety of tomato seed that has been saved for over 100 years in my area. And a number of us here continue to save that seed so that it'll keep going. Well, if you have other homesteader friends, you know what you can do? You can look at your seed collection of everything you've saved, figure out what you're really going to need, because I know you. If you're like me, you have way more seeds than you need. Like I have scads of jalapeno pepper seeds from Jack Spirko's variety of jalapeno that he's been saving seeds from for years and years and years. And I'm going to grow like what, 3 plants next year, 5 plants next year. I only need like 10 seeds. I have hundreds right now. So something you can do for other homesteaders, especially like this is personalized stuff at this point. I've always done more generic gifts in the past where it's like just make 20 of these things and then give them to people. This year, different story. This year, I've been thinking more personalized. So if you know somebody wants to grow or is a gardener and you know the sorts of things they like to grow, you can pick from your seed bank a collection of seeds you think they'd like in their garden. And at this time of year, it's the perfect time to do it. Also, if you're buying seeds for your garden, because I've noticed that the Baker Creek catalog has arrived at my house, so it's time. It's time. It's time to spend too much money on seeds, right? You still probably don't need all the seeds in the packets that are coming, and you can break those out. And then you package them in your own like seed saving envelopes. I have like a box of 1,000 seeds, like seed envelopes, like little ones that have been here for years. And I use a few of them every year and then, save them for the next year. So you can do some nice art on the packages if you want to. You can print a label if you're not the artistic type and put it on there and do a little write-up about the seeds that you're giving to the person. So, I chose these seeds. This is why. This is how you handle them. This is where you plant the plants if it's somebody who may need a little guidance like that. And this is why I thought, this was a good fit for you. And then it's just a little package of seeds, and a nice little write-up. I think that's a great gift, especially for other homesteaders or people who are gardeners or urban homesteaders, right? The next one, I've already put together a draft one of these, and that's a recipe booklet. At this time of year, we start going through our old family recipes, and we have some of our favorites, and we make things, right? Since I've gone keto, I don't do that as much because I'll eat the cookies if I make the cookies, but sometimes I'll do a batch for a party or something. But I do have just my old tried and true recipes, like the gingerbread cookie recipe that I got from my grandma, or the cheesecake recipe. That's what we made for Thanksgiving. And I did not go home from that event with any cheesecake, right? So I did notice in that booklet, guys, if you downloaded the early version, it did not mention the 2 packages of cream cheese. I think I copy pasted that wrong. I have fixed it since then. But if you're making that recipe and the filling looks like it should have cream cheese, the answer is yes. Add 2 Philadelphia or whatever, 2 8-ounce things of cream cheese, or make 16 ounces of your own farmer's cheese or cream cheese to add to that, depending on if you're doing this fully from scratch or not. Anyway, so with that, what's cool is you can print it out and give it to somebody, or if you're making something from it, you can be like, here's some cookies from this thing, and here's recipes of other ideas, and that's really a sweet gift. But you can also do it as a printable, which means you can send a message out and, to people who are not in your area and say, like, I put together this Christmas thing for you to download. Something that Toby and Ani did one year that I thought was really cool is they mailed a card out. Their Christmas card had a QR code in it, and the QR code took you to a video of them playing music. You can do that with a printable too, right? Or if you're a musician, you can do that, right? I thought that was the sweetest gift. And it's just a homemade gift, but it's not a physical item, right? It's a digital item. And it's okay to give digital gifts, and it's okay that multiple people are downloading the same thing, right? It's like, what is the purpose of a Christmas gift? It's that I'm thinking of you. I made this for you. That's another good one. So I love recipe booklets that people do. I really love them as printables because then I don't have to keep a paper thing around. But you might want to do the paper thing too. If you do a printable and print it, you can put a QR code on it that takes them back to the digital one, and then they can always access it digitally if they prefer to have it in that format. And as we move further into the technology era, I think more people are wanting things stored digitally. And that's actually, I wish there was a better way it was all organized, but I bet you AI is going to take care of that at some point. Anyway, so next up, this one is one that every homesteader who is into food preservation has, and that's jams, jellies, chutneys, salsas, canned things. I personally, unless I know the person, don't give pressure canned food to people as gifts, because I don't like, they're going to look at that and be like, how did you can the thing, right? If they don't know me very well, and I need to know that they know how to handle canned food. But jams and jellies and chutneys and salsas and pickled things, there's something they can use in the season to put on their table. That's a special thing. And it's a consumable, so it doesn't stack up, and you made it, right? So then you just take the jar and you put like a fabricy thing over it, and you screw a jar lid down, and it holds it, and it looks pretty. Or you can make a little label that looks pretty. You can write the ingredients that are in it. You can share the recipe of what it is. If it's a salsa, like I make a lot of salsa, so I would do that, maybe salsa with the salsa recipe in case they want to make it next year. And then those make great gifts. People love them, or they at least pretend to love them. But that's like your standard homesteader gift. Like that's the go-to when you're like, oh, I just got invited to a party tomorrow and I need to bring a gift. And you're like, kit of handmade stuff, right? So much for the personalized effect. But I have been giving those sorts of things to friends for a long time. Hey Alabama says hand creams and soaps are on my list to try. Are you going to make them? Hey, that's awesome. Yeah, soaps. Like I love getting handmade soaps. I've made soap one time in my life and it was successful. And I was like, yep, I'm really happy to buy soap from other people. But maybe you make comfrey salve, right? I make homemade comfrey salve every so often. And it's like I end up with a lot. And I don't use it that much. So that's something you can get those little tins and pour it into those tins, or put it in jelly jars. Jelly jars are like something you can go to the store right now and buy. And then same thing, a little bit of fabric, screw the lid down, write what it is so they know how to use it. The way I extract comfrey is I put it in the crock pot on warm for a day or two in coconut oil. I'll probably do beef tallow next, though, to be completely frank, because I'm finding that beef tallow absorbs into my skin better, or lard. I just have a lot of beef tallow because there's all the cow bones, and then I cook them down, and then there's like that puck of fat on the top. If I'm going to use it for a salve, I have to clarify it. The way I clarify it is like when you pull the puck off the top of the broth, you like cut the part off that has like meaty bits in it, and then you melt it down in water. And then you put it in the fridge again to cool down, and then you can cut off, because more of any flaky bits will be in there. You cut that off again until it's absolutely clarified. You do that twice, and I've done it just once and it's been fine. Do it twice. You've actually absolutely got it clarified. You can also pour it through a coffee filter or whatnot. I just really like the heat it in water and cut the bottom off method. And then the less surface area you have for that when it's in the water, the better, because then you'll end up with a really deep tallow with a small bottom with all of the gritty stuff on it. And so you don't have to cut as much. Like if it's wide, you're cutting all of this extra fat off, right? If it's narrow, it's less of that. So that's another one that's really fun. Oh, hey says, I have a neighbor who makes creams. Yeah, I like to give Homestead Glamour does the body butters. I've a couple of times had her do like little gift packs for my nieces. That's one that I've sent to them before. So that's another thing. You can totally source handmade gifts from the community if you don't feel like doing it. This next one is one you need to be careful how you handle it. But speaking of tallow, if you mix tallow with birdseed and put it in little shapes in the freezer with a little like burlap or ribbon or something to hang it, those are bird feeders that can hang in trees outside. The thing you need to be careful of, even though tallow is fairly solid at room temperature, it depends on the temperature of the room. So the way I make them is I mix it, I put them in the freezer, and then when I give them to somebody, I take them out of the freezer and give it to them in a way where I'm like, hey, you want to put this in your fridge probably, or your freezer. And then when you put it out, the birds love those. So that's just a fun way to feed the birds. And you can make like little hearts or whatever shape you want to make. And those are super easy to make. And it's just kind of being one with nature. You get a basic birdseed mix, put it in there, and it's really it's a cool little gift that a lot of people don't give that kind of thing. Like that's one that's more of an unusual, like a lot of people give jams and jellies because that's what homesteaders have. Not a lot of people do the tallow birdseed thing. And you could even make it into chicken treats. Like you could mix it with corn scratch or chicken feed of some sort and be like, here, these are chicken treats. Do little ones, right? All sorts of ways to do that. The silicone molds are a good way to go with that, by the way, because you can fight them out. Or you can use cookie cutters like flat on a cookie sheet to hold like a heart shape or whatever. Anyway, that's the way to do that. But what you do is you melt the tallow on the stove and then you add the seed and then you pour it into the mold with the ribbon stuck in there. And if you forget to put the ribbon in because you're me, then you can put a hole in it later and tie it through. But it's better just to remember to put it in. That's an ask me how I know. Do you sew? If you sew, then you have an unlimited number of things you can do, and you probably have scraps of fabric all over the place, and you can make all sorts of awesome things. Something I have a hard time finding in the store are pot holders like that are not silicone, like fabric pot holders that don't also melt. And this is kind of an issue, or that really work. They're not quite thick enough, so then you still get hot through them. And this is something that's happened in the last 5 or 10 years, is that I will buy something and I've learned what I have to do is test it by putting it on the hot pot and seeing if it melts. Because if it melts on your hand, you burn your hand. And the whole purpose of a pot holder is not to burn your hand. So a person who sews could make pot holders, for example, out of materials that can handle the heat. Quilted or not quilted, but probably quilted would be good, with a non-plastic fabric and non-plastic innards thick enough that the darn thing actually works. Like that would be for real awesome gift, is a pot holder that works, that isn't silicone. Because it's almost like, I'm like, who made this change where we decided plastic pot holders were a good idea? Like denim that doesn't have a bunch of rayon or whatever in it, that can actually pick something up without melting, but then you want some other layers of stuff there, right? So that's the thing. Templin says, I do my lard in jars and my tallow in bars like soap. Yeah, that makes sense. I do my tallow. I do all of it. I put it in smaller plastic containers. I know it's plastic, that I put in the freezer because I want smaller amounts for cooking. But like last year we did a batch of tallow soap at the Living Free in Tennessee workshop, just to show you how to make soap out of tallow. And I used the tallow from my, from the cow, and somebody helped me clarify it because it was right before. It's probably AJ helped me clarify it because it was right before the workshop. And then that got used in the soap. And so that was just in one big vat. But usually I melt it and pour it into smaller containers so I can just take a container or two out for the week if I'm going to use it for like vegetable sautés or whatever. So we've pretty much walked away from using any oils here in stir fry or anything else we do cooking wise, because I have so much tallow like runoff from bacon or whatever and lard, that there's chicken fat. I have like all sorts of chicken fat from making chicken foot broth. So all of that's just kept in the freezer. And then I take little bits at a time. And what I learned is I used to have it in a big old hunk. And it's like, who uses a big old hunk all at once? Nobody. Well, maybe you do. I don't do that. So I just want a little bit at a time. And that's how we do that. So, yeah. Hey, Alabama has a couple aprons cut out. So that's another great gift idea. You can take your scrap fabric and make aprons if you have a lot of scrap fabric. And then that's another really cute gift. Or pot holders, runners, napkins, and Insole Bright. So Hay's already figured out the whole thing about how things melt in your hand, and it sucks if you buy store-bought pot holders. Another good one that if you're just not super crafty, and boys and girls both like this if they like food, homemade vanilla. And to do that, you get vanilla beans and whatever 90 proof or higher alcohol you want, and you create an extraction. I have one that I extracted for over 8 years, really delicious. And you just shake it once a week in the bottle, and it extracts it. But here's a hack. If you have a sous vide machine, you can put the vanilla beans with the alcohol in like a mason jar in your water bath, and then turn it up to 135 degrees for 4 hours, and it will extract, and you'll have delicious vanilla. and you don't have to do it for like the room temperature slow way that I do it. You can do it quickly, which means you can get it done between now and Christmas. Now, a lot of people use Everclear or a clear alcohol for that, a vodka of some sort, and that's what I used to do, but I like bourbon. So now I do it in bourbon. You could do it in rum. That'll add a little bit of flavor, but when you think about how much vanilla you're putting in something, it's just a tiny little bit. And so it doesn't really matter which alcohol you use, but different alcohols will have different flavors. In fact, Mama Sauce makes hers with a different one every time. The key is 90 proof or higher, so that it does a better job of extracting the flavors from the vanilla beans. Now, where do you get vanilla beans? Now, you can just go online and type in vanilla beans, and you'll find ways to buy that. They have them sometimes at like the grocery store, Trader Joe's and stuff will have them. I've gone to eBay to buy them in bulk and then shared them with multiple people. We used to have the homesteaders of Middle Tennessee used to do a group buy, and I think they did one last year, but I still had some from before. I keep my vanilla beans in the freezer until I'm ready to do the extraction, by the way, and then I just get them in bulk, knowing that I'll make more vanilla in the future. I do 8 to 16 beans cut in half per fifth of 90 proof alcohol. More beans equals more vanilla flavor. And then once it's done, you can actually still get flavor from those beans if you grind them up if you want to. You could like grind them up and put them in ice cream and that sort of thing, is if you're a homemade ice cream maker. The next one is also totally about homesteaders and people who harvest from the land, and that's tea collections. We've been talking about different things that are good in tea. So there's bergamot or bee balm. There are raspberry or blackberry leaves. I have a lot of chocolate mint here that I like to use. We collected flowers from that plant that I can't think of the name of. Rose of Sharon is one of them. Hibiscus plant. Sorry, I had to go. Sometimes when you're podcasting, it's like the word escapes you and you're like, what is the word? I know the word. I do wild rose flower. That's something I collect every year. Those are some of the more flavorful things we get. And then there's lemon balm. Will gave me a bunch. I think it's like an orange balm. He told me, and I forgot, but it smells like orange, so it must be orange. It was one I hadn't heard of before. Smells great, by the way. Perfect for tea. If you want to mix it with other more traditional things, you can get like a rooibos in, just order it in, and make tea blends. And then, cinnamon. I like the cinnamon flavor in the sort of the cinnamon spice ones. So that's another one that I like to get in there. What was the one we had? It was Mexican tarragon that Tactical grew this year, and that's like fantastic in tea. Fennel can be good in tea. So lots of different ways to do this. And as you start experimenting with teas that you grow, I mean, we talk about some of the herbal things like nettle, that tastes like grass, or mullein, that tastes like grass. But there's a lot of good flavor. So I usually take one of the herbal things and mix it with one of the flavor things, and then I end up with a delicious tea that's also helpful for my cold or whatever, if I have a cold. Put those together into tea collections. Include instructions on how to use it if it's loose leaf tea. And if it's somebody who you don't know has a teapot, just you can get them at the Dollar Tree pretty much, or you don't have to get an expensive one. Just buy a little tea infuser ball thing that you put in your cup. Or they make an insert that I like a lot. So that's another great homemade gift idea from the homestead that you've probably already collected if you were keeping up on it. And if not, well, too late, because it got cold here and all the tea stuff is gone except for maybe the oregano. You can put oregano in tea, by the way. It's a totally different flavor, but it's delicious. Likewise, you can do herb collections. So if you were drying all your herbs this year and you collected basil and dried it, or oregano or thyme or rosemary, or garlics. Garlic, you can make homemade garlic powder. People love that. It's way more flavorful than stuff you get at the store. Put those herbs together either into blends or individual packages, and then those also make a wonderful homemade homestead gift. Then we go on to Christmas ornaments. If you're going for Christmas, pine cones, you can paint pine cones and glue little things on them. You can get your kids involved with that one. Or something that I got once on the LFT and Christmas tree that we still have these from came from Nancy, and she gave me mason jars with a hanger glued to them like a ribbon. And then they had photographs inside, like cut round and glued inside the mason jar. So it was like a little round ornament from a mason jar lid, like the ring, not the lid. And those turned out really well. I bet there was a lid in there glued too. I should look at those more carefully. I don't know if it was just the paper printed out or if it was also with a lid there for stability. I'll have to look at that one. So you can make Christmas ornaments out of almost anything, right? So that's another fun one to do. And when you're on a homestead, you may have access to things, like the horse apples. Again, you had to have probably already been collecting these, but horse apples are something some people like to put around to deter bugs in their house. Another good one you can give as a gift. A case of, last time I looked up the price of 6 horse apples, it was like $25 on Amazon. So there's also a side hustle idea for you. It's a seasonal one, but yeah. Tim Weiss says, I want to grow tobacco and make my own cigars for friends and family. Perfect. Like, take your harvest, share the abundance. It's a really interesting gift. And then you can write a little story about it. People love that. This is my last idea. So if you guys have any more ideas, you better shout them out in the comments. Cute. I spelled that wrong. There's a typo in my show notes. Really cute wood burned or carved signs. So this is something a lot of homesteaders end up liking to work with wood, and they'll get a wood burner, and you can do. So one of my neighbors, George, used to make like really intricate drawings on a piece of wood, and then he would put a shotgun shell. He would screw it into the piece of wood that was flat, and then that would be a pencil holder. Or he'd get a pen on one of those hinge things and screw that in, and then the shotgun shell, and you put your pencils in that, and it was like an artistic thing. Or you can make a sign by using, I think it's like a Dremel tool to carve in the sign, or a router probably could do that too. And especially if you have people who are newer homesteaders and they don't have a sign about their homestead yet, like look at their logo. If they have one, look at their homestead name, and you can make them like a really cute wood sign, and then like stain in where the letters are, seal the whole thing. And that makes a great gift. I know Nighthawk, when Sage died, took a picture and made, like he carved out her face on the sign and then put the years that she was with us. And that was supposed to go on her grave. And I was like, that's not going outside in the rain. Sorry. So that's in my house now, but that was a great gift. And that's again, another really personalized one. Or you can just make sayings that are less personalized, but that's another one where it's like, it's very easy to make that personalized, and that makes a great gift. And if you already have the skill and the materials, then you're good to go. And if not, it's not hard to grab a wood burner and some of your wood from the yard. Like Nighthawk has a mill now, so he can mill some of the things here, and then that makes foundations for that kind of thing. And then there you go. It's a great gift idea. Anyway, those are just some ideas I had for homemade gift ideas. If you're a beekeeper, honey is always good. There's some of those obvious things that you're already doing, or coffee in my case, right? But I kind of wanted to go on a wander through some of the other things you might make from homesteads. Anyway, if you like the show and want to support the work we're doing here, you can do it in 2 ways. 1, get your coffee at hollowroast.com. Coffee makes great gifts. 2, become a member. Head over to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out more. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.